Welcome to Kingdom First Podcast, God's blueprint for your best life. The podcast that shows you how to win in every area of your life through a biblical worldview. I'm your host, Jonathan Lautermilch, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today. I am a kingdom-minded entrepreneur who's on a mission to help others live their best life by putting God first in their life. I'm also a proud husband and father. Each week, we dive deep into the stories and lives of those who are living a kingdom-first life and how that's impacted every area of their life. We will also be breaking down how to apply kingdom principles for success in life. So whether you've been on your walk with Christ for years now, or you're still just trying to decide if he existed at all, this podcast is for you. Get ready to expand your thinking, challenge your perspectives, and build a life by design. Welcome to another episode of Kingdom First Podcast, God's blueprint for your best life. It's your host, Jonathan Lautermilch, and I've got another amazing guest out of our 8-guest series where we're really highlighting the testimonies of just, really godly men at the end of the day and how they're really starting to apply these principles to living their life through a biblical worldview. Once again, if this is your first time tuning in, I just want you to kick back, relax, enjoy the show. Your gift to us is that you're taking time out of your busy day to invest in yourself by listening to this podcast. However, if this is your second, your third, your fourth, your fifth, your umpteenth time, you know what I need you to do. I need you to like, I need you to subscribe. Even better yet, send this episode to someone that needs to hear this message today. Once again, obviously it helps the podcast, which is great, but most importantly, our mission is to help people discover their unique blueprint that God has designed for them so they can start living their best life. And with that being said, the guest that we have today, his name is Eric Mitchell. He's one of my favorite humans that I've met over the course of the past year and a half. And as I was racking my brain on the type of guest I wanted to bring on this show, Eric was one of the first guys that popped to mind for me. This is a guy that has an amazing story of what he's been able to do for almost a 30-year coaching career, from athletes to now he's working with high-level achievers now and helping them translate what does that look like in all areas of their lives. And he just has a fantastic story when it comes to his testimony of, how he found Christ and how, once again, he didn't stop at being saved. He's now out there focusing on seeing as many other people he can save as possible through his example, his stories, and really how he does life through a biblical worldview. So once again, Eric, thank you so much for squeezing some time out of your busy day to come jam out with me to share your time, talent, and treasure, man. It's an honor to have you here today.
Well, it's great to be a part of this, and that's the exciting piece of this is how connections are made, and how you and I have a very similar kind of track as to how we did things. We're in the fitness world, and then not only just being in the fitness world and counting reps, but also starting to reach out and helping people. And I think, Jonathan, I got to tell you, we're pretty blessed by the relationships. That the fact that we knew an individual named Scott Ramage. I was in the Brotherhood of Fatherhood, and was having a real serious crisis back in January. When I reached out to him, that's how I found you and Renee. And, it ties all into my journey with Christ. It ties into my journey as a better father, a better partner for for Karen, who you guys will hear about momentarily. But that's the exciting piece of this. And you're right. After 30 years in this industry with high level athletes. Now, I'm going to say that in an interesting way. It's not just these high level athletes. I mean, it's these kids as young as 7 years old. And I think that everybody has the potential to tap in for greatness, not just the pro athletes, who, by the way, I've been pretty blessed to train. And on some occasions, they're tougher to train than the 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds. So everyone in my mind is a high achiever, and everybody has the capability to do pretty much anything that from their God-given talent, but they got to embrace that.
Dude, I think it's a great thing you tapped on right there. You're like, it's easy to train some of the kids than it is actually these high level athletes. And, it makes me think about like my walk with Christ is, dude, I spent almost 40 years doing it my way. And once again, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I'm not exactly a curmudgeon either. Right. So doing life my way for so long only took took me so far in life, right? To eventually, I have my story of where I finally bent the knee and started truly putting God first, and not just the areas that were convenient or the seasons where it was convenient, but in all areas and all seasons at all times, and really started putting him first. And that's really where I discovered that next level for me on how life could be so much better than what I had originally planned and all the things I tried to do to create that life. And it's just been an amazing ride ever since. So it just made me think about that when you're talking about these high level athletes. And I'm sure like what they've done has gotten them great success. That's why they're there. But part of the reason of having a coach and having someone that's looking out for your best interest is so that they can take you to that next level. And I think it's important for all of us to always kind of have that childlike kind of mentality with how we approach life so that we can continue to keep growing. It's something they even talk about in the Bible is, go to the Father as if you're with a childlike mind at the end of the day. So you're open to the blessings.
Well, I think that that's so true. And my how I came about from this was born of an emotional crisis. I mean, I was on autopilot listen, 57 years. So I turned 57 in December, had a major emotional crisis with a breakup with uh, my current partner, Karen, who I'm back with. And then one of the major reasons why we're back is because, let's be honest, I embraced Christ. I embraced God for the first time in my entire life. I would do it maybe on the fringes when I was a little bit younger, but I didn't understand why. I didn't understand how that pathway could lead to such great, well, first of all, less anxiety, and also could lead to greater success. And what I found is when you are willing to open yourself up to trusting in your Lord, you're going to be that much better from it, and legitimately, not just. I think we find ourselves in a society that gives a lot of lip service to faith and religion, and people always say, "Well, I have faith in this." You could have faith in a toaster if you really wanted to, but you. What does that even mean? You have to really dive into like what does faith really mean to you, and that's that love and that trust that we often forget. But that's changed my life diametrically. This started in January. So for me to feel that way, and then by February, mid-February is when I made that decision. I always tell the story to people. This is my testimony. I woke up at 4:30 a.m. and at 4:30 a.m. and it's become very significant for me. It's for the audience to know. And I knew it was like a bolt of lightning. I knew. I said I have to do this. Um, and I have friends who were baptized by Steve Furtick at the church down in Elevation, and I didn't know anything about him except I'd heard some of his sermons. And I went on their website and did the prayer of baptism. Now I was going to get baptized down there, Jonathan, and then when I started having reconnecting with Karen, she felt compelled to say, "Hey, Eric, I would love it if if you were baptized in my church." And it's a local church on the western suburbs of Philly, and I embraced that because I think that the connection, because in the end, and you probably can feel the same way when you're dealing with with Renee, you're walking in Christ and God together.
Mm-hmm.
So of course I would want to do that with Karen. And it's changed my entire life. Listen, had it not been for that, I wouldn't have found you guys.
Mm.
That's the bottom line. And when your audience knows, listen, I, I'm I, I'm invested in a book to write a book, but it's part of that book's that experience,
Mm-hmm.
that transformation that's happened, and people are usually then they're scared to do it. It was scary. Don't get me wrong. It was scary, but that's what I'm embracing. It's making me a better parent, a better athlete, to train athletes. Shouldn't say athlete. I'm 57 now, but a better partner as well, better family member as well, and business owner for sure.
So, Eric, what I'd like you to unpack a little bit more, and just because it's so powerful, man, with, before that moment in February where you
Yeah.
made that decision, and obviously a lot of great things happened, and we'll get more specific into that. I want to hear more, and I'd love for you to share with the audience too, is what did your life look like before you made that decision, and what was the culmination of events or circumstances or thoughts that just led to you going, I'm done trying to build my life this way, like it's just not getting me what I'm looking for at the end of the day. I'd love for you to unpack some of that because I feel like a lot of people struggle in that season. And I know for me, there was a point in time, man, I didn't know that there was going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. I thought that I was doomed to keep living this way, and I was going to forever suffer from fear, anxiety, and depression, all the things that plague a lot of us that we don't like to admit publicly.
Yeah, it's been going on for decades. So this isn't something that all of a sudden, I've been dealing with this for decades. So you never know. It's a gnawing fear. It's a gnawing level of anxiety that's just, it's there. You can't pinpoint exactly what it is, but it affects everything from relationships to career. Your health is affected. And I think, Jonathan, I was on autopilot for the majority of my college years. I was an athlete in college, post collegiately, did some running as well for a track club, but I was always on autopilot. And I was in the fitness industry, and you know as well as I do that it's a tough industry to be in, where what you're doing is you're turning over your emotions, you're turning over I'm not going to say your soul because that's extreme, but you're turning over definitely your emotions to other people. You're absorbing tremendous amounts of negative energy from other people in order to make them feel better about themselves. So we're talking about from 1990 until 2025. That's what I've been doing. so so not realizing it, and also with the mask of success. So what would happen is people would be like, oh my gosh, you trained 17 division one, or not division one, 17 first round draft picks for the NFL, pro tennis players, Olympians, all this stuff. It didn't really matter because I wouldn't accept the idea that I had anything to do with that, Jonathan. I would always look at this and go, yeah, I mean, I really didn't do anything. I just facilitated their success. They're the ones that are successful. I was just there. And you don't accept the fact that you were given talents. And let's be honest, you're given talents by God. And it's not the training. It's how did you relate and communicate with those people? When the upheaval with Karen happened, because what she did was she challenged every moral fiber I had basically in January. Uh, and it's funny, I knew it was coming when she told me this. I knew it was coming. And for the first time in my life, Jonathan, I responded not out of immaturity or fear. I responded out of this calmness. And I'm wondering if already God had made that decision for me to say, okay, look, you can't do this. Now, I didn't know for another month that that was going to be the way it was, but I wrote a 5-page letter. Now, some people might look at that and say, okay, that's crazy stuff. You wrote a 5-page letter to Karen. Well, we didn't talk for 30 days. And on the 30th day, she contacted me. So this is February 13th. And she says, we're done. And I said, no, I don't believe that. I said, let me read you this letter. And I read the letter. And it was interesting that it all went back to faith. It all went back to an acceptance of Christ, which I put in the letter as well. She was stunned and said, that is not what I expected. And it took another 3 or 4 months to kind of start to reform and rebuild this. But I knew within 48 hours that there was something spiritually different about where I was, Jonathan. It only took another month because I still didn't understand how to process it.
Right.
And that's where I was. I didn't process it, but it changed my outlook. So I would associate myself and just say you're a performance coach. Well, now that's not the way I look at things. I look at my job is, and I know this because I journal every day. I've been journaling every day since January, praying and journaling, that God's got a different plan, and I tried to control every plan before.
Yeah,
Before,
me too.
yeah. So that's why you and I are very similar.
Yeah.
Not just our wonderful hairstyle, but 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 we're very similar. And that, so for me, I never trusted anyone. So I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust anybody. So even Karen, I had a tough time trusting, because I just didn't understand. So what's that saying? You don't know what you don't know. I just didn't know until I did. And my journey's been that, where it's been this almost this relaxation about the stress of everything.
Right.
There's still stress, obviously, but it doesn't have the same impact anymore, is what I'm saying.
You know what's wild, man? And once again, like the more you're sharing, it's just bringing back like thoughts and kind of reflections of me going through my own journey with this, and kind of have some new ways to look at things as you're sharing this. Now, one of the things that helped me kind of let go of control, because just like you, Eric, I was trying to control everything, man. Like I'm super type A, like super control freak by nature. It's how I'm naturally wired, right? But once again, as I lived my life that way, it seemed like no matter, like the harder I gripped the rope, the faster it was pulled from me. is what it felt like to me. So I finally reached a point where I was like, I'm done doing it my way. And when I fully submitted control over to God, right? Like fully in my heart of hearts. I think it's easy to say that, but it's another thing to actually say it and then actually mean it and put action behind it, right? It wouldn't be until I finally reached that state with it that I relinquished that control, that all of the pressure came off my shoulders. Because I don't know if you feel like this. I feel like if it was meant to be, it was up to me. That was a mantra I lived by most of my life, right? And then once again, I've gotten some success out of it, but like you said, it was a mask of success. It wasn't true peace. It wasn't sustainable, right? And as I've gone through this walk with Christ, I look at it as like, God's the CEO and I'm just the guy who works for him at the end of the day, right? And I always joke about this with Renee. We've just been so blessed, man, since I've made some of those decisions for our family, and obviously it's changed how I think, and it changed how I act, and that means it's obviously changing the results that we're getting. But I tell her all the time, I'm like, God's such a better CEO than me. Like just if I was on the board of advisors, I'd just be so happy. Like, oh my God, you're doing a great job, guy. Just keep doing what you're doing. No, don't get me wrong. There's some seasons he's taking me through. I'm like, do you know what you're doing, dude? Like, I'm feeling a little bit anxious about this, but I think it's in those seasons where we're tested with, okay, are you truly giving away that control? Not just because of what you want to receive from it, but because you actually truly do trust him, and he's going to see you through, even through the times that may not look as like things are going to turn out well. Has that been kind of like your experience, or is it kind of different a little bit for you through your
No,
ride with this?
it's very similar. So I always think that in the end, what it is we're always looking out for what we want, and then God's going to provide what we need. And there's
Mm,
it's a big distinction between the two there. And that's where as the same type of personalities, especially, if you have an athletic mentality and you're a leader and everything, you're going to try to dictate everything that's going on. I mean, that's from how the door's being shut, how the wash is being folded, all those different things. When that really doesn't matter in the end. What really matters is that can you trust that there is absolutely a plan that's being laid out for you, and that if you trust it and you believe it and you care, then you're going to be okay no matter what. So what I'm feeling now, which is what I never felt before, is when you relinquish control, you relinquish anxiety. When you relinquish control, you stop that your kind of defensive reactions to things. Well, that's a good way to put it. You're no longer reactive. You're being proactive because it's laid out in front of you. It's already set. Now it'll shift, and those courses will shift. There's never a straight line. It's always going to be all over the place. I saw a little cartoon. It was like our perception of life is like a straight line. God's perception, there's like ravines and high mountains and all these different things, water filled ravines, all these different things. You end up in the same place though if you put your mind to it. But that's life. You're going to learn. You learn more than just running in a straight line than anything else.
well, it's funny, thinking about that is one of the things I've learned as once again, like once I made that decision, and that was last year, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to give God like authority over my life, the business, like here you go, here's everything. And then I started getting intentional with reading the Bible, right? Because I'm like, I'm not going to read this because I'm trying to just check a box, like, hey, I'm a good Christian, I read the Bible. And so I want to read this because I want to understand you, God. I want to truly understand how you think, how you operate, the consistency with everything. And as I've read that, man, the first thing I realized about myself, Eric, is my perception of time sucks. It's awful. Because back in that control phase, like I'd have these like unrealistic expectations of my business should be at this level by this time. My relationship with my wife should be at this level by now. Why is it not there? Right. My fitness, so on. And I apply that lens to everything. And when I didn't reach that expectation by the predetermined time that I came up with, I would judge myself on that, and I would feel like I was failing, which would just create this negative cycle. As you just said, when you relinquish control, I finally did that, and I put it on God. You know what's been wild this year, dude? I'm having things happen that I tried to force to happen for 7 years that are happening within days, weeks, and months now. And I cannot speak to any other source than it's just God. There's nothing different that I've done other than let go of the control and just give him the most amount to work with through that process. And it's been the most wild experience, man. And once again, this helped me kind of realize this reading the Bible. Like sometimes God does things in an instant. Sometimes he takes 40 years to take you through things, right? Once again, his perspective of time is so much different than ours. And I think when we let go of that control of this needs to happen by this time and I should be at this level by this level in my life, man, you let go of all that pain that comes attached to that and you open yourself up to God being able to make things happen in an amount of time that you can't even fathom. Like that's been my experience so far with it. And that was one of the toughest things that I had to wrap my head around when I first started going down this walk. Cause yeah, my perception of time was terrible, to say the least.
So what I found is and you look at it from the biblical perspective when you're reading the Bible, so for instance, when God parted the waters, like the Israelites had to believe before anything else that the water would part.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I look at it was perception of that. Well, they had to actually have faith to take the step into that air, into that water before it parted. I think that Hollywood, they show it opening up and there was, I
Right.
think there was more like once there was faith, and that's why it ties directly in. What I have found is that trust in faith is more important than anything else. I actually had somebody challenge me who's an atheist who said there is no faith. And I said, you can, for me, I said, you cannot tell me there's no faith. And he said, well, I can. I'm like, I understand you can, but you can't tell me that there's no faith because it's my faith. It's what I believe. And again, hey, he's on his path. That's terrific. He's got his path, but that's not the path I'm going to go down, nor do I need to be convinced otherwise of it. And it's that's the key from what I have found and dove into. What I would aspire for me is to be more like you now, being a little bit more biblically based and reading more about the Bible. And I love historical. I'm a history guy. So I think for me it's the greatest history book ever written. And it's historically based. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the cool thing about it. So I'm with you where if once that control was relinquished, even listen, even now I'm getting excited about this. Even now, like I'm in a season right now. Lots of things happening, financially, lots of different things happening. But the anxiety is melted away. There's always a way to figure things out. Because again, it goes back to God is going to give you what you need, not what you want. And
Mm-hmm.
also, by the way, I'm learning this too, Jonathan. Like the big thing for me is being open in faith during the good times too. When things are going
Mm.
well, we often forget to be thankful for the good things, and
Well, yeah.
that's we forget.
Sorry, you cut out there a little bit. What'd you say?
Yeah, I just said I think we definitely have to be thankful for when things are going well. That's the
Yeah, well,
key.
I think it's like for me, man, it's like got like from my understanding if through my walk and when the pastor I'm grateful to have Keith Craft that I've picked up a lot on is God wants a relationship with us. So
Yes.
something that helped me put things in perspective, and I'm not perfect with this. Like it's easy to pray when you're going through things. It's also very easy to let it go when things are going well. It's like, hey, I'm good, I don't need it, whatever. It made me think of the analogy of like, you ever have a friend that only hits you up when they want something? And I
Yes.
think we all have a couple of those people, right? It's
Yes.
like you just know. It's like, okay, this guy's all right. I haven't heard from you 5 months, and every single time this dude's asking for something, he's what I call a taker, right? And you can't really have a relationship with someone like that because they're constantly trying to take versus give. Like if you're consistently always taking, eventually you're going to drain that relationship, drain that source, and then there's nothing to build on. It's not a real relationship at the end of the day. So as
Right.
I thought about those kinds of relationships and how it makes me feel personally, I started looking at myself, man. I'm like, how am I showing up for building my relationship with God? Am I showing up just as a taker? Is always asking for stuff, right? Asking for what I want versus what I need, because there's absolute truth in that. Or am I showing up just to check in with them? just to talk to him, let him know how it's going. Because all prayer is at the end of the day is just a conversation with God. It's not just let me memorize this beautiful way of saying it so I can sound good when I'm asked to do grace at the dinner table. It's no, how am I building that relationship by talking with him on a consistent basis? That's how you build a relationship over time with anyone and anything. And most importantly, God's the most important relationship you could ever have in your life.
Yeah, you said it yourself. I mean, that's your CEO too. I mean, that's the best one on the planet. But it's interesting. I've found something. So I've not only have I journaled. So I use the high performance journal. I'm a big fan of Brendan Bouchard, and so I've been using. I'm on my third journal now since January that I've been journaling, and every day there's no compromise. It's morning and night. It's 4:30 a.m. That's why 4:30 is for the audience. That's important to me because that's when I woke up. I get up at 4:30 a.m. every day. We were in Disney World a couple weeks ago. What did I do every morning at 4:30? I was up, journal, pray, train, do all those different things. And, now I got 4 hours under my belt, except by 8 o'clock at night, I'm exhausted. By eight
Oh,
o'clock,
dude.
I'm so tired. Yeah. Yeah. So never used to be that way, but it's interesting you're talking about that. So I use the Bible app as well. And the reason I do that is there's a prompt at the end that's very interesting. It actually plays some very calming music or has some water running or anything like that. And it'll tell you, take a few deep breaths and just bring yourself to God. Ask him where you are. Talk to him about where you are. And it could be a good or bad day. And Jonathan, what I have found is I'm starting to stack the good days. And even on the good days, I'm still going to do that and reach out. And not like obsessive compulsive about it, but even if it's just a couple minutes and they tell you that, they're like, you don't have to say anything. You can just have quiet reflection. You don't have to say a word. Just listen. And then there are other days. Yeah, I have to talk. I have to talk to God. I got to talk to him about stuff. But even in my silence, he's hearing that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important that people, again, good times and bad times. And,
I think it's also too, man, something that took me a long time to get comfortable with was asking for things. Cause like
sure.
you, like I naturally don't trust a lot of people just by default, right? Life will condition you through your negative experiences on, how you interact with the world if you choose to hold on to that. So for me to sit here and to open up to a spiritual being that I can't see, I can't touch. I have to truly like put my faith behind that with actually behind that belief that then have the audacity to ask for something. First it was just getting comfortable willing to ask for it. And then it took a whole nother level to give myself permission to go, I'm worthy of asking, right? Because then there's a whole mindset of like, who am I to ask God for these things? Like he's God, he's done all these things. As you build that relationship and you start to realize like, wow, he really is the intelligent design behind everything that we have there. But what helped me become more emboldened through that is, man, I just think about it as a dad. Like I would want my daughter to ask me for the things that she wants. I may not necessarily give it to her, but I don't ever want her to not feel like she can't talk to me and not communicate, because I want the best for that little girl that I have. I want her to have all the things in life. And as I've dove into the Bible, I've discovered that our Heavenly Father wants the same for us. There's over 7,400 promises in the Bible made to us, right? And that's where God's rules come into play, where that's not to hold us back or to hinder us. It's to give us a structure and a playbook to follow to go, if you want to really have your best life, start living your life by these guidelines. And some of them are difficult. We all have our own parts of the Bible that we struggle with what we're called to live by. But the more that we become obedient to those things and we're willing to ask God for what you're looking for, I found in my experience, the more blessings come flowing through that. And it's just been kind of my evolution of my relationship with him. And it wasn't something that got proven instantly for me. Like a lot of people think that God's like a genie at the end of the day. I just snap my fingers and rub my hands and I ask for the thing and it just shows up on your doorstep. Oftentimes the thing you pray for puts you down the path that may take months or even years for you to learn the thing that you need to learn or get you in the right room or meet the right person like we're talking about. But eventually that promise is always fulfilled, because there's not one time in the Bible that God did not deliver on the promise that he's made. I haven't found one single instance of that.
That's true, and it's something that you touched on. And we're in a sense some levels of contemporary. We're from a couple different, a little bit different generations. I mean, but people are afraid of the word obedience because what they find obedience to be is they almost think it's like that you have no free thought if you're being obedient to something, and that's actually not. Like you brought that up about you're being obedient to the word. You're being obedient to faith. You're being obedient to love. There's nothing wrong with that. So we actually this society, we confuse things like that. For instance, just like this, when we talk about people talking about money, and this is something that as in our field, listen, I want to make money, and I'll tell you exactly why I want to make money. It's very different from the reason why I wanted to make money at 23. I want to make money so I can serve other people more efficiently and effectively. I want to be able to have more money because that's more money I can give away to causes I want to give away to and champion those causes. And when I was 23, I wanted to train pro athletes. So
Mm-hmm.
I was gifted with that. It wasn't satisfying. It actually made it worse because I was not doing my calling. And the bits and pieces of my calling came out. I raised money for kids who've been abused. I raised money for kids who have rare genetic conditions through fundraising, through fitness. That's how I did it. I was very blessed. I was part of an organization called Training for Warriors, Jonathan, for many years. I was the first affiliate in the world, and we did a lot of fundraising. And we were very, very keen on words, and lions were a big piece of our kind of our symbolism. But I won an award in 2015 called the Nächstenliebe Award, which is a German word for loving your neighbor more than yourself. I used to go around the country raising money for abused kids I don't even know. On my own dime, I went out there and do that. Now imagine you have a business that can fund you enough that you can give more money to people that are in need. So ultimately, that's what it's about. So God wants you. People have to know this. He wants you to be successful financially. He does because he needs you to be so that you
Mm-hmm.
can go out and just deliver more to other people and serve. Someone asked me what greatness is. Greatness is service to others because you're serving yourself when you do it. You're serving God and you're serving others. I don't know how it's the equation's very simple. We're so stubborn as humans to accept the fact that that's the case. We try to explain everything. We're trying like just let it go. That's what it is. That's my thought.
Yeah, man. Well, dude, first of all, that's awesome, man, that you're able to do that. For me, last year was when I really started like tithing for the first time and taking that
Yeah.
as like once again, that's something we're just obedient to. And once again, it's the first dollar of every 10 that you make, regardless of you're making $50,000 a year, 100, half a million, a million. Doesn't matter. Like the whole point is God, I'm going to honor you with my first fruits because I know at the end of the day, this is all yours. You're just sent me down here to be a great steward of it. And what you're touching on is being a great steward of that money, right? At the end of the day. And something that helped me truly kind of lean in and just have a better understanding is, the Bible refers to this as seed, right? So we're given all this seed and we have two choices we can do with it. We can sow it or we can eat it, right? Obviously, we need to eat X amount because we need it, right? To be able to survive and to live and do all the things we're called to do. But what a lot of times people end up not doing is not realizing that when you actually sow more seed, it opens up your hand to receive more, right? And for the longest time, I hoarded my seed. Whatever I was given, I would eat it or I would save it. I was not giving it to anybody at the end of the day because I was living with a scarcity mindset. I was like, I don't know when I'm going to get this next amount of seed, or man, it took me a long time to get this seed. Why should I give this seed away? Right. But as I let go of that paradigm and started understanding that the more that I give, the more that I get. And that's not why you do it, by the way. It's just a nice little side effect that occurs as you do that. Now it's just really about having things flow through you so that now it's just about being a good steward of it because we don't own any of this at the end of the day anyway. Right. And that was another freeing revelation that I was able to finally kind of wrap my head around, which once again, it took even more stress and anxiety off that, hey, I just need to be a good steward. of what I'm giving at the end of the day. And if I can sow this seed in the right areas and help the right people, man, the blessing always comes back threefold in some shape or form. I've just had enough positive experiences with it that I don't even have to think about it anymore.
Well, I've heard you say, count, and I listen to your podcast. I listen to Renee's podcast, and I share those as well. That's an important piece of it too, because that message has to get out even further. But look at yourself from that perspective. Hearing when you say that your business diametrically changed, your development as a father diametrically changed, as a husband. That's the things that happen. And I look at it from the same perspective. I'm certainly going to be a better father to Cole as he's navigating these teenage years, and I got a teenager in 57. I got a 15-year-old. That's a
Woo.
blast.
God
So
bless you, dude.
yeah, I know. And, and then also for Karen, she actually said to me yesterday, she said, I love the way our relationship is growing. And she actually said in it with Jesus as well. And I said, yeah, I mean, this is where it is. And by the way, here's the interesting pieces. There are people in our lives that are skeptical that'll say, like, it can't happen that fast. But faith does happen that fast. It's how you develop it that takes time. We say the old adage, like Rome wasn't built in a day. Maybe not a great reference from a biblical perspective, but it wasn't built in a day. And the kingdom of God was built over several days, but then he gave us the ability to nurture it and to give us and to give us his only son. That has meaning. And then you have to work through that for yourself. And it doesn't matter if you're 11 years old or 57 or 40. It doesn't matter when you figure it out. And this is for the rest of my life. It's going to be a time of learning for me. And that's the
Mhm.
great thing about this. It never stops. That's the great part of this.
Well, the age old saying, this isn't biblical, however, but I do think it has some relevance is, the teacher always arrives when the student is ready, right?
You got that
I,
right.
be- I believe that's how God works. Once
I
again, God's patient. He'll
Yep.
give you a lot of time and give you a lot of rope. Real patient, right? So eventually, the bill's gonna come due. And God's like, hey, I've given you more than enough time to figure out what you need to figure out. And I think that's where God will intervene at certain times to point us in the right direction. But he's not going to release the blessing until we're finally ready and we got it, right? And then
Agreed.
once again, once you're ready, man, that blessing can change things overnight at the end of the day. But it might have taken you 10 years to become and learn and finally get in a position where you were truly ready to handle that blessing, because a blessing given too soon can be a curse for you, right? I think about, if I had my business grow the way that I wanted it to, I would have collapsed under the success of that, because I wouldn't have been ready to actually handle that success, right? So I've had to go down a windy road to grow into the type of man that can handle something at that level and be able to sustain it and continue to grow that. But once again, if I went based on my timing, I'd snap my fingers in year one of my business and I would have been a million gajillionaire, right? But we have to go through these processes to grow through them so that when we're ready, that's when we get released the next blessing. And just to tie it back to being a dad, right? Like, I think about my daughter. Like, yeah, there's a lot of things I could do and get her right now, but I need to keep in mind, like, here's where she's at in her life. And when she's ready, great. Here's the next thing I have for you. But she's obviously got to grow through some things in order to receive those blessings from me as her dad at the end of the day. And part of that comes for her being obedient. Because if she's not going to be obedient, I'm not rewarding that behavior. Why do you think God will reward us if we're not being obedient to the basic things he gave us?
Well, that's profound, man. I mean, that's a kind of a mind-blowing moment for me to hear that too, where you're looking at it from again, going back to that word obedient, is that a lot of times it's perceived as a very negative thing, where we perceived it as kids as being seen, not heard. We just had to be obedient. We had to do what we were told to do. That's very different from the obedience you're talking about. And it is in the end your
Oh,
daughter having faith and trust in you as parents, even if she doesn't even know it at this point.
right.
That's
Well,
just what it is.
I'll give you an easy example. So we do family walks when it's not 115 degrees outside like it is right now. And as we're walking, there's obviously streets and alleys and cars driving by. So like as we're training our daughter, who's like a toddler still, how to like watch for cars before she crosses the street. Dude, in the beginning, she was just like running across, not paying attention. I'm like, that's an easy way to get ran over,
Yep.
right? So we had to really drill into her like you need to stop and you need to look. And I'll never forget, we had one night where she was just refusing to listen to me, and I had to punish her for that, to take away one of her toys, and she got to see that side of me that's not the fun like lovey dad, but the no, this is what it's going to be. And I'll never forget, she cried all the way home, but when she got home she cried and apologized to me and hugged me afterward, right? And it was very hard for me to do that. Like nobody wants to do that job in the relationship, right? But I know that if I don't teach her this, man, you know what would kill me? She's out there by herself one day when she's older, obviously, and then she gets hit by a car and
Yep.
dies because I didn't have the wherewithal that drilled that discipline into her. And I ended up figuring out a fun way to teach her how to stop eventually. And now she's good with it. But that's part of the obedience is I need you to be obedient, not because I'm trying to limit your fun. I'm trying to keep you from getting smacked by that car that comes by the alley that you can't see. So, what do you think the Lord our Father has for us for being obedient? Because He knows what happens if you go outside the lines down
Sure.
that path.
And ultimately he's incredibly patient, like you said in the beginning of this conversation. He's incredibly patient because he obviously he wants us to go down the right path. And if but again, it does fall back on that you definitely have to have faith in that God's going to be looking out for your needs more than anything else. I mean, you could be like I did and kind of go through life not even acknowledging that, or maybe being too afraid to acknowledge that. And there's a lot of really good people on our side, Jonathan, that are trying to always help us. I have an aunt and uncle, they had long passed away, but this is how old we are. My uncle served on, was a fifth engineer Marine on Iwo Jima. And so I used to love to sit and listen to his stories. But they would always say, we have hope for you. We have hope for you. And I know for a fact that my Aunt Margie and Uncle Harold are rejoicing right now at this situation, and that, I know it, I have faith that that's the case. And yeah, and being obedient is going to be a game changer for me. I have my little setbacks. What are you going to do? That's
Oh,
what, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And just to be clear, like, this isn't saying that, like, hey, once you do this, you can't ever sin again or you're a
No,
bad person. Dude,
no,
like, we're going to constantly struggle with sin. And
absolutely.
we all have which ones impact us more than others, right?
Sure.
But I think that's why God lets those things continue to challenge us, is so that we have to rely on Him to help grow and get through those things, right? So once again, it's not about being a perfect Christian and I make no mistakes now and oh my God, because you're whatever you're struggling with, like that's a lifelong struggle. Like if you look
Yeah.
at like some of the most impactful people in the Bible, all of them had sins they struggled with. Samson had issues with adultery. Um, Noah had issues with, like, once they literally got out of the ark, he got pissed drunk and was naked in the garden afterward, right? So if you think of all these great men and women throughout the Bible that were used in God's way to expand the kingdom, they all had their sin or sins that they consistently struggled with. And I think that's kind of the point is, God wants to use people that are broken and lift them up into opportunities to help because they can connect with those other broken people. So it's not about being perfect, man, but it is about being honest in your heart and being honest with what you're doing every day to show up and be better at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Without question.
And I think that's the beautiful part with it. So what I like to kind of like as we start laying the plane for the episode, man, and there's something I wanted to touch on, but bro, this is just so fun jamming out with you. I wasn't even expecting to go down the obedient path with you
I
so
know.
much.
I
That was fun to talk about.
know.
But something that you touched on, and I think is really important, and I know it's important because it's changed my entire life too, is when you're in agreement with your spouse, right? on
Hmm.
putting God first. Like
Hmm.
the best way it was explained to me was imagine a triangle. You've got you
Hmm.
on one corner on the bottom, you've got your spouse on the other corner on the bottom, and then God's at the top, right? And when both of you are in agreement of building and growing and working towards God, what happens is you both end up meeting at the top, right? And that totally changed my mindset and led me to ultimately like this is how I'm going to run my family, right? And it shifted the whole dynamic between me and my wife Renee, which obviously on social media y'all see like the highlights and the good parts. And there was a very long time where me and her weren't doing life together. We were competing against one another. Like we were basically
Mm.
doing life side by side. We weren't going
Mm.
towards a common destination. We were just doing it in parallel, and we were competing with one another about who could do it better, and whether that's career or money or all these different things. And it caused a lot of issues with us behind the scenes. But once we both got in agreement with, hey, we're going to do everything towards God. This is going to be the rule book that we follow. This is the order of priority of how we live our life. That was actually when things fell into order for us, right? And that's when Renee truly started following me as the leader within the house, right? And I share all that to one, be transparent, but the number two, I know your relationship with Karen has totally shifted. And what it sounds like is dude, she's in tune and she's following your rhythm and following your lead now because you put God first. And I'd love for you just to kind of unpack that experience and how that kind of shifted the dichotomy of y'all's relationship.
Yeah, I think that for the longest time, what she was doing is she was begging me to be part of that triangle. She was begging me to be part of it. That's interesting. I love that because pyramids are very important, even in the speed school, the Parisi speed schools that we use, because it's built on what's the strongest point of the foundation of a pyramid is the base. But the reality is, and you opened up a new paradigm for me. So if God's at the top, what He did was He built the base, but you both
Mm-hmm.
have to be on the base. So it's got to be me and Karen. We weren't there. What I was looking at, it was I was the base, and she was just at the time an interloper on my base, and that's what I was thinking and the way I thought. Now I didn't consciously think that. I didn't consciously think that because I wasn't connected to the top, Jonathan. I wasn't connected to the purpose with God. The moment I did that, she aligned herself with me at the base because it
Mm-hmm.
was it's and by the way, it's all she ever wanted was that. And she's expressed that many times. It was one of the greatest things to hear me say that I'm embracing my faith. And yeah, it's diametrically changed where we are. I wouldn't say that she and I were competing. She was begging me to be a part of her pyramid, which I wasn't. I was literally on another one, just doing my own thing. And so that's where I think I was, where it was that. And yeah, I think that what Karen looks at, now, and she's saying he's embracing this faith, he's embracing kind of, his God-given talents now, and she can be there with me on that. And that's really important to her. And I keep saying that her version of it, like she's expressed this. It's not me going, well, that's what she wants. What I know is that what she was looking at and saying, Eric, this is what I need from you. This is what I need from you. And that's where, and she says that we can walk in Christ with that. That's fantastic. So yeah, it's changed our entire relationship because we actually have a base now, Jonathan. We're in the same pyramid now. It's not me trying to do it
Mm-hmm.
myself. So yeah,
Dude,
it's
it
been
just
pretty
gets
great.
so much easier, dude, leading your family through that way. And
Yeah.
once again, I spent so many years doing the personal development groups, following
Yep.
the gurus and the guys that look like they had it all together, just to find out that they're even more messed up than I am behind the scenes. And every time I tried to apply that to my life, it never created a result I was looking for. Not one time.
No.
When I finally put this in perspective and started living through a biblical worldview, all the things I struggled with in my marriage, all the things I struggled with in my business, all the things I struggled with personally went away by just following this blueprint. And man, I'm just so grateful, dude, that I was able to figure this out. Because there was a season, dude, that I never thought I was going to have the things that I have now because I was constantly trying to do it my own way. And I just think it's so beautiful, dude, that you figured this out in this season with Karen, man, because it just takes all the pressure off. And now you guys can go build something that will
Yep.
far surpass both your lifetimes because you're truly on the same team now. And that's how I feel with my wife too, dude. And it's one of the best feelings in the world.
It is. It's a tremendous feeling, and not being afraid of that, not being afraid to grow. Which for the longest time, well, like I said, if you don't know what you don't know, then you're building everything on fear. And I've chosen not to do that any longer, and it's liberating. It's wonderful.
Yeah, man. Well, awesome. Well, Eric, man, it's been fantastic having you on the show. I got to start laying the plan on this episode. So, like, what's the best way for people to connect with you, follow
Yeah.
you, do all the things after today's episode?
Well, I'd say that social media is probably the best way to go nowadays, and Instagram's probably that, and Facebook. I mean, it's at Coach Eric Mitchell on Instagram. It's just Eric Mitchell on Facebook, and if anybody reaches out and contacts me, I'm going to contact them back just so that they know that. And I think the easiest way is through social media now, and that's the easiest way. And very excited about the process that's happening for me. Book coming out soon, which is really, really exciting. And just I'm going to keep growing, and that's where I am. So yeah, that's my story on how to get in contact with me for sure.
Awesome. Well, Eric, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your time and your talent with me on the show
Thank
today.
you.
This has been a great episode. And for those of y'all tuning in, I'll make sure all those links that Eric just mentioned are in the show notes. They're super clickable, easy to find. And once again, if you got value from the episode, please make sure you share this with someone that needs to hear this today. Like, you have no idea that this video may quite possibly change someone's life. So once again, I appreciate it for supporting the podcast, but more importantly, it's about the mission that we're on. So until next time, go all in, put God first in your life, and I'll see you in the next one.
Excellent.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Kingdom First Podcast, God's Blueprint for Your Best Life. We hope you found it inspiring, entertaining, and thought-provoking. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review on iTunes and Spotify. Your feedback means the world to us and helps others discover our podcast. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube and Facebook to stay updated on upcoming episodes, behind-the-scenes content, and everything else. Thank you again for being a part of our podcast community. Until next time, stay all in.